Okay, so this is 5.3. We're going to try another problem using the distributive property to help us break down those big multiples of 10. Okay, so this one looks like we're dealing with a band here. A lot of bands march in rows, long rows, so that might be a big number we're going to be dealing with. It says Megan's watching a marching band practice. The band marches by with 4 rows of people playing instruments. I'm thinking of drums, I see, thinking of cymbals. Sometimes there's the girls twirling the baton or horns. She counts 30 people in each row. How many people march in the band? All right, so that last question makes me think of total, right? Like, what do I need to find here? This question mark sentence is what we're trying to find. How many people march in the band? So that's what you should have work on writing right here. And if it says how many people, it means like total people. Okay, now then I'm going to think of what information I need to use, like what are my clues I'm going to be using to solve this. Okay, well, the first sentence is not that helpful with any clues, but the second one has 4 rows of people, and then there's 30 people in each, right? So that's what I'm going to fill in right here. Okay, then my last step that I want to think about when I'm trying to figure out the problem is how am I going to use this information? Like, what strategy am I going to use? So, like we did on the first page, we're going to think of kind of like a multiplication problem or a number sentence here, which would be 4 times 30. So let me write that instead of writing the actual number sentence. I'm going to say number sentence. And if my number sentence is 4 times 30, I'm going to use a strategy that I've learned about number sentences, about multiplication. I'm going to use the distributive property because 4 times 30 is kind of large for me. So when it says how will I use it, they mean what strategy are you going to do? So we're going to use a number sentence and we're going to use the distributive property. Okay, so over here, I'm going to put my number sentence so I can see what I'm working with. 4 times 30. And I'm going to start to actually solve this, okay? So again, like we said, 4 times 30 might be a little big. How can we use the distributive property to break that 30 down into easier numbers? I'm going to start with a 10, right? So 30 is like 3 tens, 10, 20, 30. So I'm going to think of my 4 is going to stay the same. So down the side, I need to count 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put a 4 here so you can see that I need to do 4 rows, but instead of doing all 30 at once, can I break it into a group of 10, a group of 10, and another group of 10, right? 10, 20, 30 with my plus signs in between to show I'm really combining these. Okay, now remember how I said I gave you that hint that that darker blue line is really cutting it into groups of 10 for you so you don't have to like count really easily. So 1 row of 10, 2. You could also think of it if you wanted to do 4 times 30, this whole thing is 30. 10, 20, 30, right? So 1 row of 30, 2 rows of 30, 3 rows of 30, 4 rows of 30, okay? Now, but they're saying that if you do 4 times 30, again, that's too hard. So break it into 3 separate arrays for yourself to make it easier. So I'm going to change the color of my array so you can see how there's going to be 3 different problems now. Okay, so I changed their colors just so you can see how I broke that big picture down into 3 smaller, easier pictures. Okay, so now, let's go back to blue here. This first array, as I am breaking it up, okay. is 4 rows down, and then remember these sections are groups of 10. So this one is 4 times 10. Then my next row, or my next array, is also 4 rows down. They're all 4 rows down, right? Every single one has 4 rows. And again, it's another group of 10. And my last section of the array is still 4 rows down. 1, 2, 3, 4, because they still have 4 rows of seats. And it's another section that I broke down into a 10. Because again, a 30 is like a 10 plus a 10 plus a 10. But all of them need to multiply with that original 4. The 4 has to stay the same. So sometimes, I think somebody showed us, I think it was Justice showed us the trick of taking this 4 and multiplying it by every number inside of here, right? So I have 4 times 10, 4 times 10, 4 times 10. So what do those each equal for me? And you can write it out across. I'm going to write all of those out across here. Okay, so I took some time to write out each of those multiplication problems down here so you can see how it goes from this row to then showing all the multiplications of the 4 times 10, 4 times 10, 4 times 10. And now we can do 4 times 10 so easily in our head. 4 times 10 is 40, and it's the same thing each time. So 40 plus 40 plus 40. Now I might want to do that on the side. Some of you can do 40 plus 40 plus 40 mentally. But just to be safe, we can do 40 plus 40 is 80, and then another 40 is 120. So this all together is 120. So you just solved 4 times 30 by breaking down the 30 into 4 times 10, 4 times 10, 4 times 10, which would be 120. Now the next question says, how can you check to see if your answer is reasonable? That means it's not like some really outlandish, impossible to make sense answer. So if this is your answer, 120, how could you see if that makes sense? Well, two ways that I'm thinking of to check to see if it's reasonable is I could think of another way to solve multiplication. 4 times 30 really means 4 groups of 30, right? So if I did 30 and 30 and 30 and 30, what would that be? Wait a minute. Yeah, 4 groups of 30. 30 plus 30 plus 30 plus 30 is another way of solving this. So would I get the same answer? 30 and 30 is 60. So this 30 and 30 would be 60. And 60 plus 60, 6 plus 6 is 12, and then just put the 0. So that makes another way of checking it. Another way I could see if it's reasonable is I'm thinking of 4 times 30. So look at the digits without the zeros. 4 times 3 is 12. And then there is a 0, so that means that maybe it could be making sense too. Okay, so we're going to skip this last one. We'll stop the video here and we'll do another one for share and show. Good job, guys.